Well, you asked me about my connection with the community center, Jewish Community Center. It started perhaps when I was 11 years old. I'm now 90, and there hasn't been a year in between that it hasn't been a part of my blood. But actually, all these years, while my mother was still alive and extremely active in the center, I said, our home was really an extension of the center. We were a part of everything. We really, I don't think Edith and I would ever consider not being involved or not coming to the aid of the center, because it's in our blood. Financially, we've always given of ourselves because we were not in a position to give dollars and cents. We gave perhaps some wisdom, but energy, and always effort. And I think that one of the things that is the most important in my life is the fact that I've had that opportunity to be of service, to see change, to help make it, to learn many, many different things, and to be able to hop into a problem that had to be solved and do it. Over the years, I can't begin to elaborate on all of the things that I did, but some of the things that are the highlight to me are what I would like to touch on. And Edith touched on the mortgage bit, and I think that it was an extremely important time in the center's life. And I can recall at a meeting of the campaign committee when it came time to perhaps give in on the mortgage or pay the consequences. My mother, who was always on every campaign committee as a financial secretary because they didn't dare do anything without her advice, actually, I remember seeing the meeting that was held, that she held, because they were getting a little upset. It was getting tough. It was a year when it was difficult to collect money, and I will not mention names at this point, but the then chair people of that committee were ex-presidents of the center and very active members and family members. But they were ready to throw in the sponge because it was really too hard. And my mother really never lost her temper, but she looked at them and she said, "You are not going to quit." She said, "You are not meeting any problems that we didn't have to meet when we were your age." He says, "You will not stop. You will not lose the community center, period." They didn't stop. That's when the 1929 the extension, after 33 years, was built. But this is the kind of blood that runs through our system. And so all these years, both her husband and mine were very active in the center. Bernie, who unfortunately died in '95, and who was a very, very strong stalwart of the community center, was on the board for many, many years, was secretary of the board. He was the first athletic coach, an athletic athletic committee chairperson. He was that athletic committee chairperson for years, and he died at 87. He was still involved with the athletics at the center, which had changed considerably from the days in the 60s and the 50s and the 40s. But that was one side of our life. I know he was a secretary for a while because I used to type the minutes, and I remember doing that very definitely. But as far as myself is concerned, I think at the time I got my senior life saving, I also was a lifesaver for the center because they couldn't afford to have a paid person in charge of the pool. Couldn't have people swim without somebody qualified to be observer. So although I was going to college at the time, I was able...
Stop once. You said situate? No, you kicked the camera over the way. That's why.
We had a problem. To get back to the swimming deal, I was too young to belong to the then Junior League, which was the social group for the post-teenagers, or at least the advanced teenagers. And so I used to run the swimming pool at night and teach, but mostly as a lifeguard. And along with that, the community center in its early days had a pool, which nobody else on Staten Island had. We had the first swimming pool on Staten Island. And we had inter-center competitions regionally in the New York State region. And in order to be a participant, you had to be a member of the AAU. And in my cleaning up process recently, lo and behold, a little piece of orange card fell out of something. And it turned out to be my membership in the AAU back in 1931. And so, I mean, you know, it's kind of interesting to find that it was there because I was able, a few years later, to run as a guard and a teacher in the swimming pool, even though I was not old enough I wasn't 18 yet, so I couldn't belong to the Junior League.
Do me a favor, your mic is on the
Oh,
coat, so
my mic
put
is
your
on
coat-
there.
Put
Okay,
your coat back around.
okay.
Put your coat back around. There you go. That's perfect.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Well, that's okay.
That's-
Let me ask you one question. The place that the Jewish Community Center has played in your personal social life, your community life, what it meant to you personally through all the years?
What has it meant to me personally? Well, in an indirect way, I never realized that it would happen, but I always used to think that Bernie was great God, a wonderful guy. And I got to know him, and he taught me how to dive. And so I met Bernie on a social level. He turned out to be my husband. And I think I'm very fortunate in that respect because we had 55 years together, and he unfortunately died in '95. But together we were involved with the center, and so in a sense, our home became an extension of the center too, because he was involved in so many parts of the center, on the athletics and on the board and on numbers of different committees. I was involved in the bulletin and the general PR for the center, and I did. As a matter of fact, you get every year the center puts out a program booklet. I did the very first one, and I have a copy of it with me, and I thought I might like to show it to you afterwards so that you can see it, because it was in many ways an important document, because it for the first time enabled the community to know really what the center was about. It brought together the whole community because all of the organizations, the Jewish organizations, were represented in there with their schedule of events. And it was a mimeographed thing that we put together ourselves and sent to the then membership. If you look at the one that you received this year, it certainly is a 21st century model in color, beautifully done, but the information is merely an expansion and an extension of the activities which were started in the early days. So that's, I think, something that I'm kind of proud of. I'm also very proud of the fact that the Music Institute is accomplishing the things that it's doing. And Bernie and I together really had a lot to do with that too. In fact, at one point I was, when Sidney Demner was president, I was still doing PR, and I felt that we weren't doing enough to find out what the changing community was needing. And so I volunteered to do a real market research job, which was my professional side of me. And I conducted a really professional study from which we learned many things about what people thought of the center, what we would want about the center, and particularly with the music. Bertha Mandel had received a copy of it, and she called Bernie and said she would like to be involved in the work of the Music Institute. Well, she has been a long-standing director of the Music Institute for all of these years, and I'm still involved with it. And seeing the change that has taken place from the early days when it was volunteer leadership and had to become professional leadership, I think these things give me a great lift, because it's important that things should continue. And so the Music Institute is the only music organization on Staten Island that is a part of a national music accredited organization. There are lots of music schools and music teachers, but ours is an officially nationally recognized by an organization which oversees such things. So the Music Institute is very important to me. The fact that we have a new building, a 21st century building with all kinds of technology and everything else that goes into all of the things that have developed since I was 11 or 12 years of age, is exciting. But I also am very much concerned about the fact that the continuity is important, because most of the people who are currently involved with the community center grew up in times that were entirely different than they were at the time that the center was built. But it foresaw the need, and if it weren't for the fact that the original board and the people who supported the center back in 1929, if they had not stuck with it, the current building might not be a part of the community's opportunities.
So let me take that and ask you one last question.
Yeah.
This is where, and it's the same question that I asked your sister. If you're standing there and they're cutting the ribbon on the new building, what are some of the legacies? What are some of the things that will go through your mind as you watch this building start?
Well, I can't just say that it's a sudden thing. This is growth, and I'm very delighted to see that the community center has stuck with its principles and has become a very significant part of the community. It has made opportunities for people to show leadership, to be a part of the total community. And so I look at it as another step in the growth of the Jewish community on Staten Island.
And if you took the next sentence and you said, but I never want them to forget.
That's right.
Take that, start with that.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm leading up to the fact that change is important, and you have to ride with it without losing some of the personal and human features. And I think it's very important for the community center to continue to grow, but it must never lose the personal touch with people. It must always be considerate of what's going on. And I hope that there will be changes in the future that will be quite unrecognizable to those of us who've been around before. But that is what you expect of a community organization with a strong concern for its people, its culture, its service, its own community. And I hope I live long enough to see even further change. So, but don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Don't throw the good things. Don't lose the feeling that I hope you all have, those of you who are really involved in this building and for the first time as a community center, because you have to grow, but you must never forget what others did before you, because if they didn't do it before you, you wouldn't be doing it now. And I continue to be young in heart, young in spirit, ready to do whatever I have to do, and I do. So there is, the Music Institute is one example of my current involvement, but along the way, there is virtually nothing that I haven't had a finger in somewhere, and particularly on the research angle, the publicity side of it, the collection of things that I have indicate that I can be happy about the fact that we're here now in a new building with much, much larger Jewish population on Staten Island, with greater needs for service, and may it ever be thus.
Thank you very much.